Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing another round of if you didn't like this book, then I think you should check out this book instead. And this is a video that I think I've done at least once or twice before, and so I'll have the previous time linked down below, but this is a video series that I really enjoy doing. I've done a lot of, if you like this book, check out this book kind of videos before, and I've also done a lot of videos that are like, if you like this book, then I think you should check out this TV show or movie that's also similar. So I'll have all the videos, I've put them all into like one huge playlist that's like, if you like this, check out this kind of vibes, but this is going to be specifically if you didn't like this book for whatever reason, I think you should check out this book instead. And these are going to be books that I personally wasn't the biggest fan of some of these books, but I found books that have similar vibes or similar plots that I just think are better recommendations if you're looking for something kind of like that, but you didn't feel any satisfaction from that read. Then I do think these are books that I could recommend. Like if you're still looking for something of that nature and you didn't find it in that book, then these are some books that I think you should be reading instead. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? I'm so excited about this list. The first one that I have is going to be if you did not enjoy Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, then I think you should check out Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng instead. And it's not that I didn't enjoy Malibu Rising, I just think I expected a little bit more. If you don't know anything about Malibu Rising, it's a story about these four siblings, and it's kind of like a literary fiction style of writing. It's kind of like a historical fiction as well. It takes place in the 80s, and this one, we just follow these four siblings. The story begins with a fire. It's kind of like a flash forward. There's a fire, and you're trying to figure out like what could have happened, and it's very like Gatsby vibes in the way that we're just following like these rich, four siblings. They're the children of like a really famous actor, and we just kind of follow them on the night of this like really big party that they're having in Hollywood. And I think if you didn't enjoy Malibu Rising, like I thought this book was fine. For me, it was about a 3-star read, but if you're looking for something like this, I would definitely recommend checking out Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, because these books actually have so much in common. I just found Little Fires Everywhere to be a little bit more deeper, and I connected with the characters a lot more in Little Fires Everywhere. And in this story, we're also following four siblings in this book, and this one, I guess it could be considered historical as well because it takes place in the 90s, which I guess these days might be considered historical, I don't know. But this one takes place in Ohio, in Cleveland, I'm pretty sure. And this story, it also does begin with a fire, and we're trying to figure out, it's kind of like a flash forward, and so we spend most of the story trying to figure out like what led up to this fire. And I just think, if you're looking for something that has like really good sibling dynamics and really good characters, but also just like really deep and like thought-provoking conversation and moments, I think Little Fires Everywhere definitely takes the cake for me personally. I know both of these books are really popular and really well known. It's really interesting too because, Little Fires Everywhere was adapted into a Hulu TV series, and currently the same creators that made Little Fires Everywhere are currently working on an adaptation for Malibu Rising. So it's interesting that the same creators could see such similarities in these stories and want to adapt both of them. So I guess we'll have to see if the Malibu Rising adaptation is as good as Little Fires Everywhere. Like, we'll just have to see. My next one is going to be if you did not enjoy the book No One Gets Out Alive, then I think you should check out Lock Every Door by Riley Sager instead. No One Gets Out Alive is a book that I personally really struggled with. I actually ended up DNFing this book about 300 pages in because this book is so long. I want to say it's like 500 to 600 pages, and this one is a horror novel, and in No One Gets Out Alive, we're following this protagonist who's this woman who is just really poor and really struggling, and she ends up moving into this building that's kind of run by these somewhat shady men, and so she stays at this building, and she doesn't know if this building is like haunted or like what's going on in this building, and it is very disturbing. And I think if you were looking for something like that, but you didn't end up liking No One Gets Out Alive, quite like myself, I would definitely recommend checking out Lock Every Door by Riley Sager instead. I will let you know that No One Gets Out Alive is definitely more on the horror side of things, while Lock Every Door is more of a thriller, but this one definitely has that like horror element and like horror feel to it, because in this book, we're following this young woman named Jules, who is also, very poor and living in New York, and she comes across this opportunity where she can be getting getting paid to live in this building called the Bartholomew that's in New York City, and she thinks it's kind of like suspicious because the building has all these like weird rules, like you have to stay in the apartment overnight and you can't have any guests and like all that kind of weird stuff. But I just think these books are very similar because, you know, we are following a protagonist who's in like a very desperate situation because of their financial situation, and then also like they're moving into a place where they think this place could potentially be haunted, or they're getting really weird vibes from the place, and not just from like the place itself but also the people who are running it just seem very shady and very weird. But I would definitely recommend Lock Every Door over No One Gets Out Alive because I feel like No One Gets Out Alive is so long and it gets so repetitive, and for me personally it started going into territory where it's like I don't really feel comfortable reading about that kind of stuff, whereas I feel like Lock Every Door is a little bit more like mainstream and it's a little bit more, I don't know, like easy to read, easy to get into, and Lock Every Door is one of my favorite books of all time. I think it's fantastic, so if you haven't read this one, I would highly recommend. Alright, my next one is going to be if you did not like The Stand by Stephen King, then I would recommend checking out Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel instead, because both of these books are kind of like pandemic books, right? Where there's like a flu virus type of thing that breaks out, and then we kind of follow these characters not only through, you know, the moments where the pandemic is actually, you know, breaking and spreading and going, like the world is going insane, because we do get both of that in these stories. But then I think both of these stories, the way that they're similar is that we kind of follow, you know, these characters even after like the pandemic has been around for a long time, and we just kind of see how people deal with this. And it's not that I didn't enjoy The Stand, because I definitely enjoyed this book. It was more of like a 3-star, like middle of the road book for me, whereas Station 11 I thought was one of the most beautifully written books that I've ever read. And I think another reason to compare them is because, you know, The Stand is so long. It's about 1,100 pages long, I want to say. And so if you're looking for something that has that kind of like pandemic, you know, frenzy, but then it's also like, it just has really good characters, and you don't want to read a book that's like 1,100 pages long, then I would definitely check out Station 11 instead, because Station 11 is a lot shorter of a book, but at the same time, it has even better characters in my opinion. Like this book just has characters that I really connected to, and the writing was just so beautiful in this book and so well done. And so I just think if you're looking for a pandemic kind of book like this, and you were kind of intimidated by The Stand or disappointed by The Stand, I would definitely check out Station 11. I think Station 11 is so good. It's one of my favorite pandemic kind of books that exists. My next one is going to be if you did not like Every Value Break by Peter Swanson, then I think you should check out Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins instead. And the reason for this is that both of these are thrillers that have, you know, some island vibes. You know, in Every Value Break, we're following this couple who they go to this island for their honeymoon, but on the island, it's very strange because they're not allowed to like have their phones on them. And she notices that like almost all of the staff and like everybody there is a guy, and she's just getting like major red flags from everything about this island. But for me personally, like Every Value Break just did not work for me. Like it was just a little bit over the top and a little bit ridiculous, and like especially just towards the end, it just got so chaotic and it wasn't really fun for me. But I think if you're looking for something kind of similar where it's like a creepy, spooky island and there's like some mystery and some intrigue, I think you should definitely check out Reckless Girls instead, because Reckless Girls, while it's not like the most insane, you know, incredible thriller you'll ever read, it was just so interesting and so like unput downable, and you're just gonna fly through it. And Reckless Girls just has like, it's just so much more fun to me. You know, in this story we're following a couple who lives in Hawaii, and they make this agreement with these two girls that are visiting Hawaii that they're gonna take them on their boat and take them to this like mysterious island. This book was just so entertaining. Like, I don't know, I thought the characters were so much more interesting in Reckless Girls, and like the situations in Reckless Girls, like yeah, they're kind of ridiculous at times, but it was just such a more fun read. So I would definitely recommend Reckless Girls over Every Value Break. All right, my next one is gonna be if you didn't like Every Last Secret by A.R. Torre, then I would definitely recommend Good Rich People instead, because these are both stories where we kind of follow unlikable characters who are really rich and just really obnoxious and just kind of over the top and annoying. And I always talk about how I love following, you know, characters who are unlikable in thrillers, and I do love like the rich people murder vibes kind of trope in thrillers, but sometimes it really works for me and sometimes it really doesn't. And so Every Last Secret, unfortunately for me, it was a situation where like it just did not work for me. I thought these characters, they just acted in a way that was so incredibly immature that it was just like, it was making me lose brain cells. Like I was getting so frustrated with them. And I think Every Last Secret is more focused on like, I don't know, kind of like affairs and like cheating, and like that's the kind of route it takes when it comes to like the thrills in that book and like like blackmailing people and like that kind of stuff, which is not that interesting to me personally. And so I just think if you're looking for something that has, you know, rich people murder vibes, but you didn't get that from Every Last Secret, I would definitely check out Good Rich People instead. I had so much fun with Good Rich People. Like, I gave this one 5 stars. Like, it was just so freaking entertaining. And this is one where we're following like a rich couple who they end up renting out their like guest house to different tenants, and then it's kind of about how they fuck with that tenant. Whoever moves into their guest house, they just kind of fuck with them and try to like ruin their life. But it's so freaking entertaining. Like, there is not a single likable character in this book, but did I have the best time reading it? Yes, I did. I feel like Good Rich People too, it has like one of those kind of like, not like a plot twist, but kind of like something in the plot that happens about halfway through where you're like, oh shit, like there's a little reveal and you're like, oh my god, this changes everything, you know? So like, it's just a fun time. Overall, a really fun time. Highly recommend Good Rich People. All right, my next one is gonna be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, so apologies, but if you didn't like Beach Read by Emily Henry, then I would definitely check out The Roughest Draft instead. And both of these are romance books that follow writers. You know, in Beach Read, we're following these characters, January and Gus, and they're gonna be swapping genres for the summer, essentially. So he typically writes literary fiction and she usually writes romance. And so they decide, they like make this bet, you know, it's like very like hate to love. They make this bet where they're like, okay, we're gonna swap genres for the summer. And Beach Read was all right. This was like a 3-star book for me. There was just some things about this book that didn't work for me, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Gus as a character, as a love interest. He just kind of like drove me crazy sometimes. But I think if you're looking for something that's like a romance book where we follow writers and where they kind of connect with like their passion for writing together, oh my gosh, I think you should check out The Roughest Draft, because The Roughest Draft was everything. And in The Roughest Draft, we're following these 2 characters who, you know, they used to write a ton together and they were never like actually together, but they always like had these like romantic feelings for each other at some point. But now it's been like years since the last time they've written together, and they've tried to do stuff solo, but like it just doesn't work out the same. And so their publishers and their friends are like begging them to write another book together. And so in this story, we're following them when they go back to this place to write another book together. I feel like The Roughest Draft was everything that I wanted Beach Read to be. Like, when I picked up Beach Read, I was expecting to feel all of the feelings that I felt when I read The Roughest Draft. You know, like, I just think The Roughest Draft really delivered for me on like the romance and like that tension between them. Oh my gosh, it was just so freaking good. So I think if you're like me and you read Beach Read and you thought like, meh, I mean, it's fine, I guess, and you're just looking for something that might give you that satisfaction that you're looking for, I think you should check out The Roughest Draft. It was really surprising. All right, my next one is going to be if you did not enjoy 9 Lives by Peter Swanson, which honestly, like, who even did at this point? Like, I just see so many negative reviews for this book and I don't really know a lot of people that enjoyed this one. But if you are like me and you did not like this book, then I think you should check out Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney instead, because both of these books are, you know, Agatha Christie kind of inspired retellings where it's kind of like people are getting killed one by one and you're trying to figure out who the killer could be kind of vibe. So both of these books definitely have that like Agatha Christie retelling formula kind of situation going on, but 9 Lives was one of the most boring books that I've ever read that has a formula like this. And the ending, oh my god, the ending is the thing that pisses me off the most in this world. Like, this ending was so stupid, and to be honest, it just kind of like ruined the entire experience for me, and this ended up being a 1-star book for me. Like, that's how much I despise this book. The ending just really ruined it all for me. But if you're looking for something that has that kind of like, ooh, people are getting killed off one by one and you're trying to figure out who the killer could possibly be, hello, I would recommend Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, because Daisy Darker ended up being like one of my favorite thrillers that I read last year. Like, this book just really surprised me. Even though this book is an Agatha Christie retelling, it still feels so like fresh and new and different. And I know like the ending of this book is either gonna, you know, people are either gonna love it or hate it, because it's definitely an ending that's a little bit, you know, out there. It's a little unexpected for sure. But I personally loved it so much. I had the best time with Daisy Darker. I feel like these characters just felt so real to me. And this is definitely one where most of the characters are very unlikable, but it's in the way that I like when it comes to thrillers. Like, it was just very entertaining. And I just think this was a million times better than 9 Lives. So if you're looking for something that has that Agatha Christie feel to it, Daisy Darker, it's amazing. All right, my next recommendation is going to be if you didn't like Suburban Hell, then I think you should check out out the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix instead, because Suburban Hell, you know, the thing that both of these books have in common is that we're both following a bunch of moms, you know, who are living in the suburbs. What I didn't realize about Suburban Hell was that it was going to be mostly a story that revolved around like an exorcism. Like that was like the main thing. The thing that these have in common is that we're following, you know, like these suburban moms who are like taking on this like evil thing, you know, like they're fighting back against some kind of evil. And I just think if you're looking for something like that, but you're like me and you don't really like, you know, stories about exorcisms, because like I don't know why exorcisms just honestly kind of like bore me to tears when it comes to horror books. Like there are very few horror books I've ever enjoyed that features an exorcism, and so Suburban Hell ended up being kind of disappointing to me for those reasons, because I wasn't really thinking it was going to be about, you know, an exorcism. But if you're looking for something where like you're following a group of suburban moms and they're taking on this like evil thing that they don't fully understand, oh my gosh, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires is so fun, because, you know, like that book, we're following a bunch of suburban moms in this book who are taking on vampires, you know, like there's like a vampire who joins their little book club, and then it's like chaos, you know, it's just absolute chaos. It's so much fun. I also think the Southern Book Club's Guide just has better horror in general. Like there are some moments in this book that have stayed in this brain for years. Like there are some scenes, I still remember vivid details from certain scenes that I was like, oh my god, like that is truly disturbing. And so I do think this book just has it all, you know, it has the horror, it has the comedy, it has like the good vibes. It's just a good time all around. Highly recommend. All right, my next recommendation is going to be, if you did not enjoy Jackal by Aaron E. Adams, I would highly recommend checking out When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. And both of these have very similar premises. They're both horror books where the main protagonist is a black protagonist and she's going back home to the small town where she's from to watch her white friend get married, essentially. Like both of these books have very similar plots in that way. And so the thing in Jackal is that when she goes back to her small town for the wedding, her white best friend who's getting married, her daughter goes missing, and her daughter is half black, and there's this thing going on in this town where all of these young black girls are going missing and nobody can, you know, seem to figure out what's going on. And it's not that I didn't like the book Jackal, it's just, it's so hard because I have really mixed feelings about this one, because I was loving it at the beginning. Like I thought this book was so freaking interesting and so engaging and so well written and well done. But then it was mostly like the ending of this book where the story really fell apart for me, and I just thought it was kind of like cringy, and just there was a lot of aspects of this ending that really didn't work for me. But I think if you're looking for something with like a similar plot, I would definitely recommend When the Reckoning Comes. This is like one of my favorite horror novels, and it's, you know, kind of a similar premise where we're following this young black woman who's going back to her small town where her white best friend is getting married. But the thing is that her best friend is getting married on what used to be this plantation, but they've turned it into a resort. And so it's just really creepy all around, because like a lot of the staff that's working at this resort are black, and there's just a lot of like really weird kind of like disturbing things going on. And I don't know, there was just something about When the Reckoning Comes, like this book just absolutely worked for me in every way. Like there were so many great scenes with like the horror in this book, and I honestly just felt really connected to these characters. Like this is like one of those horror books where you genuinely do care about the characters and like what's happening with them, and I just thought it was so well written and so well done. And so if you were reading Jackal and you were kind of disappointed in any way by where the story ended up going, I think When the Reckoning Comes would be a good recommendation for something else to check out. All right, and then the next one that I have is, if you did not like The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, then I think you should check out The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz instead. I know both of these obviously have very different vibes in terms of like The Villa is definitely more of a summer vibe, and then The Writing Retreat, like there's a lot of snow happening on this cover, so like in atmosphere I guess they are a little bit different, but they also have so much in common as well, you know, because both of these stories, they're both new thrillers that have recently published, and they both follow female writers who have kind of like toxic friendships. And so in The Villa, we're following these two girls that have been best friends for a long time, and they're both going to be taking a trip to Italy together because they want to finish writing their books. While they're in Italy, they stay at this place called the Villa, where there were these murders that happened there in like the 70s or something, like a long time ago. And so it's interesting because in this book, we not only get the perspective of like the two friends who have, you know, kind of like a toxic at times, like weird female friendship, like the friendship dynamic between them is really interesting in this book. We not only follow the friends, but we also get flashback chapters to, you know, the 70s, and we kind of see what happened back in the day. But this book just didn't really work for me, unfortunately, because I found the flashback chapters to be absolutely so boring. It was like watching paint dry. Like, I just did not care about anything that was happening in the 70s. I just feel like I wanted so much more out of this like female friendship, you know? I feel like this author did a good job of like setting it up, but I just wanted it to go places where it just didn't really feel like it was going there. With the writing retreat, oh my gosh, this author really delivers on the female toxic friendship. And these books are similar because we also do follow two female writers in the writing retreat. We follow Alex and Ren, and they've been best friends for about like 8 years now, but they've recently had this like weird falling out where they're not really talking anymore and they're not really close. But then they both get the opportunity to go to this writing retreat that's going to be held at this woman's house who's like a really well-known, successful author. And she's gonna give a few women the opportunity to compete against each other to publish a book. And I just think if you were looking for like that, you know, kind of toxic female friendship narrative to really like drive this story and you just didn't get that out of this book, then I would definitely recommend The Writing Retreat. I think The Writing Retreat is probably like my favorite thriller that I've read so far this year. Like, I just had such a great time with this book. This was a 5-star read for me. It was so entertaining and so unhinged. Like, if you're trying to read a book about two female writers, like, this would be the one that I would recommend. All right, and then the last recommendation that I have for this video is if you did not like the book Falling, which is a thriller that has come out pretty recently here, then I would definitely check out No Exit by Taylor Adams instead. And the reason why I compare these two books to begin with is because I do feel like both of these books are kind of like thriller books that have little to no mystery. Like, they are just intense, action-packed thrillers where you just feel like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. And so the book Falling, it has like one of my favorite book premises because it's like there are 143 passengers on board, but what you don't know is that 30 minutes before the flight, your pilot's family was kidnapped, and for his family to live, everyone on your plane must die. And the only way the family will survive is if the pilot follows his orders and crashes the plane. And so this book is, you know, it's meant to be like this fast-paced, intense book, and this story is just like a non-stop thriller like the whole time, you know? But for some reason, Falling just didn't end up working for me because even though I feel like it was intended to be this like non-stop like thriller, I just found that I didn't really care that much about anything that was going on. Like, I don't know if it was like the writing style or just like the characterization was just not done very well. But even though it has such a cool premise, I just didn't think it was that interesting. But I think if you're looking for a thriller that is, you know, action-packed, non-stop, edge of your seat thrills the entire time, then I think you should check out No Exit by Taylor Adams, because this is a story about a woman who, you know, she's in the middle of like a snowstorm, like a blizzard, and she gets trapped at this rest stop with a few other people, and then she notices in the back of one of the vans in the parking lot, there's a crate that has a child in the back of the van, and so she kind of spends this book trying to figure out whose car that is. Like, she doesn't know who she can trust at the rest stop, like who has abducted this child. But then it's also just this, you know, non-stop like thrill ride from beginning to end. Like, this is one of the most intense action-packed thrillers that I've ever read, and it's just so, you know, interesting. It all takes place on the same night. It's all during this like, you know, blizzard. It feels very like claustrophobic and isolated. This author, Taylor Adams, did such a great job with like making me actually care about the situation, and I actually felt like I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, whereas with Falling, I honestly just felt bored most of the time while reading this book, even with a really good premise like that. So if you're looking for a thriller that will actually thrill you, I would definitely check out No Exit. All right, so those are all of the recommendations for today. For if you didn't like this book, then I think you should check out this book instead. I would love to know your thoughts on what you think of videos like this, and if you like hearing about, you know, comparisons between different books, like if we're all still here for it. I personally love these videos so much. Like, they just make me so happy. I love to find like similarities between the books that I'm reading. And again, if you have missed any of the previous videos that I've done in this series, I will have a playlist linked down below that will have all of the times that I've done if you like this, check this out kind of video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!